that would be the point of this last shiur, to make sure that we all know what to do in every action of the Shabbat. And of course, we will also go over the roots, the causes of every action we do, so we will know a little bit why we do it and not only what we do. So, I can't share a screen now. Rabbi Moshe David, or
yeah, we're having technical. We're just starting up this noon. I'm going to make you a host of Natan. It's the only way it's working right now.
okay.
I'm going to make you the host. 1 second.
Okay, I will go now, and I will share this. Does everybody see this? Are we on? Yes. Good. Okay.
Yes.
So the first meeting was the fundamentals and the preparation for Shabbat. The second meeting was about Shabbat Eve. Last time we didn't have time to talk about the Shabbat Eve meal. So this time we will talk about that and about the morning. And let's dive right in because we don't have a lot of time. So the meal Shabbat Eve. So when we come back from the synagogue, the Midrash says that when a person comes back from the synagogue, there are two angels that come with him or with her. You can guess what does those two angels represent? Anything that is two in Shabbat, we spoke about it a few times. What will these two angels represent? Zachor and Shamo, like we spoke, remembering Shabbat and keeping Shabbat. And those angels are escorting a Jew back to his house. And the Midrash says that if everything is ready, then those angels bless him. And if things are not ready, then the angels don't bless us. But that is the reason that when we come back home, we say Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem Malachei Hasharet. Welcome are you, the angels. And in the halakha it says that it should be very close to when we come back from shul. I want to say a comment here that it is important that we go to the table and we start the meal or the singing before Kiddush as soon as possible. But as we said last week, the most important thing in Shabbat is Shalom Bayit. And therefore, if things are not ready, then the most important things are to be happy and to work together in order to make the meal ready. And not of course not with cooking or anything that is forbidden on Shabbat, but setting the table and everything. It's important to keep a calm time and a happy time on Shabbat. There are a few songs that are customary to sing before Kiddush. The most well-known ones that at least all Ashkenazi communities do are Shalom Aleichem, welcoming the angels, and Eshet Chayil. Eshet Chayil is a chapter from the book of Mishlei, talks about the virtue of a woman who does a lot, and this song, the most simple reason that we say it is because traditionally the women were mostly in charge of the meal, and therefore before the meal we acknowledge the work of the woman of the house. But there are deeper reasons as well. From the time that the Kabbalah came in, Eshet Chayil is also a symbol of the presence of the female side or the female revealed side of God. And to me, it sometimes seems, I don't know what is more feminist to say. Is it more for acknowledging the work of the woman, or to disregard the work of anybody who worked for the meal and think about the presence of God? But anyway, it's very special and a very important psalm to say before Kiddush. There are a few other psalms that different communities say. There is no strict halacha about it. And we're moving on to the Kiddush. Regarding the Kiddush, there are quite a few ideas that we have to think about. So let's just go over it. The Kiddush is the most basic component of Zachor. The Gemara says that the pasuk Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekadsho. How do you perform Zachor? How do you perform remembering the Shabbat? So we already spoke about many ways that we remember Shabbat. We spoke about quite a few in the past two meetings, but the biggest one, the one that is the most classic one, is what the Gemara says: Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekadsho, zochrehu al hayayin. When you what is to remember the Shabbat and make it holy? It's to remember it over a glass of wine. There's a connection between having a wine and remembering the Shabbat. Does anybody want to raise a thought? Why? What is the connection between wine and Shabbat? Between wine and remembrance, sorry, between wine and remembering?
There's a clear connection between much wine and not remembering, but
yes.
But could it be what is the name? The Oleg, the level of satisfaction that Shabbat is after creating the rest and being satisfied in the body. I don't remember the Hebrew name. Is it Oleg? What is?
Well, I think that there are a few interpretations for that. I think that the basic thing is that wine was a way to make something clear, to make something a decision was made on wine. Things that were festive and important to remember were made over a glass of wine. And wine is a sense of bringing. It has a sense of bringing everybody together, and so drinking a wine is a way to make the moment memorable, or make the moment important enough. And so we're doing the Kiddush on wine. It should be standing because, as we talked about also last week, the remembering of the creation of Shabbat, the fact that God has rested, that is a testimony, and therefore we should stand when we make that testimony. The cup has to be, it should be a cup that is dedicated to Kiddush, but if you don't have a cup that is dedicated to Kiddush, it's fine to use any kind of cup. It has to be a whole cup, meaning that nothing is broken in the cup and that the cup is clean. So you can't use, well, nowadays I think it's not even a problem in our society, but you can't use a cup that it was not washed, that is dirty. And when you see this question arise sometimes when someone made a kiddush and you didn't hear it and you want also to do a kiddush and you wonder whether you can do it from the same cup that the kiddush was done over before. So the basic ruling is that we have to go and wash the cup and dry the cup and fill in new wine. There are other ways to do it also. If anybody's in real stress and there's not enough wine to pour everything and pour back, then there are ways to do it. You should ask.
Sorry to disturb you, but my friend Dan Abrahamson cannot get in to the shiur. Will you please get him in?
Okay.
Rav Natan, if you want to remake me the host, then I can try to deal with it.
How do you do that? Make host. But now I don't have the screen, right? Okay, never mind. Let's move on.
Will you let him in?
So, yeah, they're taking care of it. Thank you.
Okay.
So the kiddush has to be washed. We're saying the text of the kiddush. The person who does the kiddush, when the kiddush starts with Vaye'erev Vayiboker, the custom is to look at the candles, and it's very important to cover the chalas when we make kiddush, and that is part of a whole issue that is concerning the laws of brachot. As you know, when you have bread on the table, bread should be eaten first before every other food on the table. And since we want to do kiddush on wine for the reasons that we said before, and still we need the chalot there, we need the two chalas there, because that's the beginning of the meal. The way to do it is to cover the chalas. The famous way to say it is that the chalas won't get embarrassed. That's what, at least in Israel, they teach the children in the kindergarten, that we don't want the chalas to be embarrassed, so we cover it. The truth is that we don't want to recognize the chalas when we say a blessing over the wine, since if we would recognize it, we would have to bless the chalas first, as every meal when you have bread on the table. When we cover the chalot, we are free to say the blessing of the wine and to drink the blessing of the wine, and then we uncover the chalot, and we can move forward with the hamotzi.
We have a question here from Michael and Eva.
Yes.
Yes, I just want to ask something, because after Eshet Chayil, you know, I use books that I get from DMT a long time ago, and between Eshet Chayil and before the Kiddush is the blessing of sons. Should we do that or not?
Yes, there are a few customs as to when to do it. There are people. Thank you for reminding me. There are people who do it before the beginning of all the songs. There are people who do it where you say it, and there are people who do it after the kiddush. It's not a strict halacha to do it at all, and it's not a strict halacha where to do it exactly, but it's a beautiful custom to bless your children. And yeah, if you like to do it there, then it's a very good place to do it. And yes, I encourage everybody that has kids to make sure to bless them during either before the meal or during the meal. I mean, either before kiddush or after kiddush or between the songs. It's a beautiful custom, and it's important. for the children to feel the blessing of their parents. And since we mentioned it, then it's the blessing that we bless the children are the same blessing that Jacob blessed Joseph's sons. For the boys, and for the girls, we're blessing them that they will be like Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, our four mothers. And then we say Birkat Kohanim, the bracha of the Kohanim. Their parents who put their hands on the heads of their children when they bless them. There are parents who bless all their children together, and parents who bless each child individually. Their parents that the father blesses the child and then the mother, or the mother and then the father, so the child moves between the father and the mother. And there are parents that both parents together put their hands over the head of the child and bless them. Anyway, it's a very, very important custom. And I will just say that my parents didn't bless me every Shabbat, and unfortunately that moved on. I'm not used to bless my children every Shabbat, so maybe I should get back to it after your question, Michael. But it's not a halacha anyway. It's not that if you didn't do it, you got into trouble, unless you got into trouble with your kids,
Thank you.
So drinking the wine is an important thing. You must drink the wine that you bless. I'm not talking to those who do the kiddush. Drink the wine that you bless. The minimum required is when you drink and you feel that the wine is filling your mouth, or at least filling one side of your mouth. It's called in the halachic language melol ugmav, and there are opinions that you have to drink more, that you have to drink a certain sum of the cup, that is more than half of the cup. If you have trouble drinking wine, go for the minimum. And if, like me, you have a real trouble drinking wine, then it's possible to share the wine. If you share the wine with others and all together you get to more than half of the cup, then this is a possibility, but not preferable. So I have a real problem drinking wine. Unfortunately, it doesn't do me so good at Purim. So I share my cup with my wife every Shabbat. But it's better to drink at least to fill your one side of your mouth with as much wine as possible. And of course, there is a custom to let everybody else drink from the wine of the Kiddush. A person who didn't taste from the wine of the Kiddush heard the Kiddush, he can move on with the meal without drinking. And it's important to know that when you do kiddush, let's say in synagogue, and people feel that they didn't get the cup, the small plastic cup with their own wine, and they get frustrated. They don't know if they essentially had the kiddush or not, if they didn't drink. So I'm saying now that it's preferable to drink, and actually it's preferable to drink from the wine that was blessed. And if you don't drink from the wine that was blessed, then it's not. It's fine if you didn't drink at all. Of course, it's nice also to have your drink, your little cup, but don't be stressed if you didn't get a cup and you heard the bracha. You can move on with the blessing of the challah. one last thing about the kiddush that will lead us already to the next stage is we spoke about it briefly also last week. Kiddush has to be in the place where we eat. In other words, we can't do kiddush, I don't know, in the house and then go out for a meal in the park. You should do kiddush in the same place. What is considered the same place is a whole big discussion. Is moving between one room to another considered a different place or not a different place? It's a whole discussion. It would be very interesting to get into it. Basically, the simple thing is that it should be more or less in the same room. So if you're doing kiddush in one side of the room and you're having the meal in the other side of the room, that's absolutely fine. And since it should be in the place of a meal, if you don't have, if you want to wait with a big meal for later, you can eat a piece of mezonot, a piece of a cookie or a cake or a knekkebrod or cracker or anything you have, and to make this your meal essentially, and then when you come back home, you start from hamotzi. You don't have to do the kiddush again. Or when you're home and you want to go to a different home for another meal, so when you get to that other meal, you don't have to do kiddush. You can start right from hamotzi. But it's important when you do kiddush, at least eat something that makes it a meal, either bread or some kind of mezonot. And it's important, especially for people who hear the kiddush at the synagogue, where you have some kind of a kiddush. It's important that you will make sure you say mezonot after hearing the kiddush, and say the blessing when you finish. Say the blessing of after eating mezonot, ala michya, so you will have a meal there. So that was the last thing I wanted to say about the wine. Is it possible to get back to the show or the matzeget, Rabbi Moshe David?
Yeah, I'm gonna make you the host again, but then just you'll be in charge once
Okay,
we
so
can't.
I'll see if there are people who are entering.
Yeah, and if anyone's raising their hand, there needs to be unmuted. That's all. Because there was a problem having a co-host but
I see.
you will become the host again. Bevakasha.
I hope I will meet the challenges here. So we're getting to hamotzi. So as we know, we need to have at least two chalot. It's very important to have two whole chalot, not broken. And again, two chalot, one for the sake of zachor and one for the sake of shamor. Before the challah, we wash our hands. That means going to a sink and having a vessel for washing the hands. Again, it should be a whole vessel that is not broken. And wash our hands. The basic custom is 3 times on each hand, and say the blessing of washing of hands. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al netilat yadayim. And I just want to mention, because I talked with a few people who were confused. It's not something that we do only on Shabbat. Every time we eat a bread, we wash our hands. It's not part of the Shabbat ritual. It's part of the eating rituals. And so it's important to remember that washing hands is relevant anytime you eat bread. When you come back, the bread is supposed to be covered, so you open the cover. You're not allowed to speak between washing hands and eating the bread. because it's one thing. Washing the hands is the way to eat bread. And if we're starting to talk and we're setting our mind away from the bread, then we are stopping this link between the washing of the hands and the eating of the bread. So that's why we're not allowed to speak. If there is a great need to speak, if you need something, then you should do in every in different ways of communication that is not speaking. Things that are absolutely connected to the bread, you are allowed to speak. So if you want to ask someone to pass you over the salt and they don't understand in hand language, then you can just say it. Since you're talking about the bread, it's clear that you're not breaking the link between the washing and the bread.
What's with amen after when I have said yadayim, and then the next one says yadayim? Can I say amen?
No, you shouldn't say amen. No.
Okay.
There are many customs of how to what are the motions of saying the blessing of the hamotzi, which challah should be on top of which challah. I won't get into it. You could see a bit of it in the book and you can research it. It's very interesting. There are many Kabbalistic aspects to how to do it exactly. And I encourage you to research it. Nothing of that is pure halakha in the sense that if you don't do it the right way, you're missing the mitzvah. So I encourage you to find it and to find the way that you connect how exactly to do the motions of cutting the bread and blessing the bread. What is important is that bread should be eaten with salt. And so prepare salt before, and before you're giving out the bread, put a little salt over all the pieces of bread. We just finished the month of Tishrei. On month of Tishrei, the salt is substituted by honey for having a sweet year. And for whoever's it's relevant, I just want to make sure that they know. I don't know if we have here any people who are about to get married or that just got married, but there is a beautiful custom that a couple in their first year of marriage eat every Shabbat the bread with honey. So yeah, I think it's beautiful. It's important to pass on the bread. I'm talking now to those who cut the bread. You should cut the bread in pieces that are big enough, not too small. Of course, you want enough for the whole table, but the pieces shouldn't be too small. So when a person eats it, he eats something that is worth the blessing, and try to make sure that the person who blesses the challahs eat before everybody else. I know it's not so polite. And it sometimes it makes me uncomfortable when I'm trying to put in the food in my mouth before everybody else gets the bread. But it's important, since I was the one who blessed the bread and the rest of the people eat from my blessing, I should be eating first the challah. And one little thing, if a person doesn't have wine at Shabbat evening, they should do the kiddush on the challah. If you didn't find wine, you find yourself without wine, the way to operate is do the kiddush on the challah. So what you should do is say Shalom Aleichem and Eshet Chayil, then go to wash your hands. When you're back from washing your hands, hold the challah, say the whole kiddush, and then instead of saying Borei Pri Hagafen, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Borei Pri Hagafen, say Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. So this is what you do if you don't have wine. Yes, Michael.
I have two questions. One about what you say now. My grandfather, he used to cook raisins. He didn't drink wine and use it as the wine. Is it okay? You cook the raisins and drink the liquid of it.
Yeah, most people hold that grape juice is okay for wine. Some think that there has to be some alcohol, but most opinions are that also grape juice is fine for wine.
Okay, and the next question is, when you make the kiddush, after you say Borei Pri Hagafen, then I have been at other people's home that stop there, but you must continue after you drink the wine with the Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzah banu.
Yeah. Yes. This is the kiddush. So yeah, it's very important to move on.
Yeah, but after you drink.
You don't drink when you say
you.
Borei Pri Hagafen. Okay, thank you for this question. The kiddush has two parts, and the blessing of Borei Pri Hagafen is on the end of the first part. But you don't drink when you say Borei Pri Hagafen on the kiddush. You say the blessing Borei Pri Hagafen, you move on to the second blessing, and only after you say Mekadesh Shabbat in the end of the kiddush, that's when you drink and when you pass the drink over.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about the kiddush and the bread? Anything that you heard that doesn't go along with what you do, with what you saw, something that is not clear? Okay.
Maybe I'll just add, because I've heard the question before. Sometimes we get this, you don't need specific challah for Shabbat meal, and any type of loaf of bread, as long as it's whole, would be okay, as long as, of course, on the kosher list. So in that sense, if you didn't, many people enjoy making challah, baking it and kneading it, etc. But you could go to the bakery and buy a regular loaf of bread, 2 whole loaves for the meal, even if they were not specially made for Shabbat. I've heard that question before. I thought it might be helpful.
Thank you. It's very important. Yes, Rebecca.
Does that mean that, because like you're supposed to do the separation of challah, so like how often do you need to bake then, or can you do, because you can't do separation of challah, can you, with or bread that's already baked? Or am I wrong?
You mean the separation of the challah when it's how do you say, to say the blessing of the challah? You mean when you make it? Yeah, that's before you bake it. Anytime you have.
But is it necessary? So like if, for instance, I buy a loaf of bread in the shop and I prefer to do it that way, and then maybe I bake maybe once every 2 months, is that considered like enough to do the blessing over, the separation?
The blessing of the challah, of the dough, is for the one who makes, is an obligation for the one who makes the challah. You don't have an obligation to do a blessing of the dough, in a weekly manner or in a set time. Whenever you make challahs with your own dough, you are obligated to do to bless the dough.
Okay, that's really good to know, because I hate baking. So, so I thought that it was
but
mandatory.
It is a big mitzvah. It is a big mitzvah to make the challah. So I encourage you to do it even if you hate it.
Yeah, no, but it makes it easier for me to do it then once every month or once every 2 months, rather than thinking I need to do it every week, because that's a big stress factor.
Okay, so
thank
I'm
you.
happy you're less stressed now. This is the meaning of Shabbat. So, any other question? Okay, so we will move on.
Can you
What?
do you have time to explain how to do the blessing of the challah when you bake it?
The blessing of the challah when you bake it, the blessing of the dough?
Yeah.
I'll say it very briefly, but it's important. We will teach it here, and it's important to be in the shul and to know it more. Briefly, you're taking a part of the dough that is around the size of your palm, or it could be a bit smaller. You pick it up, you say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehafrish chala min ha'isa. And then you cover it with some tin foil or anything, and throw it to the oven so it will be burnt down, so you can't use it anymore. And before you throw it, you pick it up and you say Harei zo chala, and you will see all those words in every siddur you come across, or in the internet.
Thank you.
Okay, so we won't have time to see this beautiful source that I put in front of you, but if you have time to copy it, or to, I don't know what to do, and to learn it afterwards, I think it's beautiful. This source is about Zmirot, singing on Shabbat. It's a custom that it's not halacha, but it's one of the things that are most ancient in our tradition, to sing in the meals and to be happy. And it would be very good for everyone to learn Zmirot and to sing Zmirot. And there are many tunes to every Zmira in the book that you might have, the book of the Kiddush. And oh, by the way, this is the right time to say, if you don't have a special book for the Shabbat meals with Kiddush and Zmirot and Birkat HaMazon, you should buy one. And you should buy one that has also transliteration and also a translation to your language, so you understand what you're saying there. But it would be a nice thing not only to read from the Siddur, because usually the Siddur has a bit less Zmirot, and that you will have for the whole family, or a few extra also for guests, a Zmiron. The end of the meal is Birkat HaMazon. If you are more than 3 men, you need to do a zimun, which is to invite everybody to bless. The way to say it can be found in all the Sidurim. Just make sure to remember that if you are more than 3 men in the same meal, you should have a zimun. And if you are more than 10 people in the same meal, then it should be also over a cup of wine. It's not obligatory. If you don't do it, you didn't miss the blessing, but it should be over a cup of wine. Above 10 men. Lower than 10 men, it's a zimun, and lower than 3 men, you don't do anything before the blessing. Again, I want to stress that the blessing of Birkat HaMazon, it's not a Shabbat ritual, but it's a bread ritual. It's something that we need. It's a blessing that we say every time we eat bread. I heard a few people who thought that it's something that they do especially on Shabbat. But on Shabbat, we add things that we don't add in the weekdays. There are a few blessings, and you should see in your Siddur, where it says in parentheses, in Shabbat you say this and that, you should be aware that there are things that you add on Shabbat. I'm moving fast. I'm moving fast because we're out of time and there's a lot that we want to continue. So after this part, I will ask if you have any questions. Shabbat day. We're back to Shabbat day. On Shabbat day, it says in the halakha that you're allowed to start praying later than usual, since Shabbat is a day of rest. So you should rest as have a good rest on the night. But make sure when you come to the synagogue that you're not missing the time of Kriyat Shema. There's a specific time of the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema that if you say it later, you should still say Kriyat Shema, but you didn't perform the mitzvah of saying Kriyat Shema twice a day. So you should check every morning, basically. It's not something about Shabbat, but since on Shabbat, usually we wake up late and we start the prayer late, you should check when is the time of Kriyat Shema and make sure that if you see that in the synagogue, the minyan won't say Kriyat Shema before that time, you should say it alone in your house before the beginning of the prayer. Just say Kriyat Shema, just to make sure that we're not missing the time. On the Shabbat prayer, there are a few things that we add as well, as all of you might saw. There are psalms that we add in the first part of the prayer. There's a big psalm that is called Nishmat that we say in the middle of the prayer before Baruch Hu, before we start the middle part of Shacharit, and also after that there is a nice song El Adon, and after that also a few hymns that are connected to Shabbat. It will be very interesting for you to research this, to understand a little bit what we're saying in the prayer that is connected to Shabbat. We're bringing Shabbat into our prayer in many different places along the prayer. On Shabbat, we read the Torah. Now, I want to just explain a little bit about that because many people don't know, and it's actually very beautiful. You can see the source here from the Talmud, tractate Baba Kama. Would anybody care to read the source in English?
And they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. Those who interpret verses said that water here is referring to nothing other than Torah, as it is stated metaphorically concerning those who desire wisdom. Oh, everyone who thirsts, come for water. The Baraita continues. The verse means that since the Jews traveled for 3 days without hearing any Torah, they became weary, and therefore the prophets among them arose and instituted for them that they should read from the Torah each Shabbat and pause on Sunday, and read again on Monday, and pause on Tuesday and Wednesday, and read again on Thursday, and pause on Shabbat Eve, so they would not tarry 3 days without hearing the Torah.
Yes, so we have here a description, this situation where they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. That's right after the going out of Egypt, after the splitting of the sea. And I think it's a beautiful source that says that when you walk 3 days without having a word of Torah, you're getting weary. It's like not having water. And this is the source of reading the Torah on Shabbat, and not only on Shabbat. In every community that has a minyan during the week, we read the Torah also on Monday and on Thursday. And so it was clear for our sages, or according to this source, it's already before, it's to the prophets, that we have to open the Torah and read the Torah. And I want to stress that this is not part of the mitzvah to learn Torah. Learn Torah is a mitzvah that later on we have said that we have to think about Torah and to learn Torah day and night. V'hagita bo yomam v'layla. This is not it. This is the point where the Torah gives us life and exposing us to the Torah, not as a source of learning, not an intellectual source, but a source of giving us the strength of who we are. We are linked to the Torah in a way that is not only intellectual, it's existential. And therefore, those prophets constituted that we will read the Torah on Shabbat because it's part of who we are. And we can't get along 3 days without being exposed to words of Torah, whether we understand them or not, whether we had an intellectual revelation or not. It's about reading the words of the Torah. And this is the source of having learning the Torah reading the Torah every Shabbat. In the beginning, in the land of Israel, they didn't read parashot like we read parashot. There were smaller parashot, what are called in nowadays sdarot, sidra, and there are a few Bibles and Chumashim that show the sidra. It's not parallel to the parasha. In every parasha, there are quite a few sdarot. And in the land of Israel, they used to finish it every 3 years. And when they got to Babylon after the destruction of the temple, they saw that they need something even more structured, since they don't have the temple anymore, and the people of Israel are scattered around. And so the sages in Babylon constituted that they divided the Torah into parashot. Well, not exactly in Babylon, that was in Tiberia, but I won't get into the whole history. But the Bible, or the Torah, the 5 books, were divided into parashot in a way that we will finish the Torah every year. And as you know, we just finished the Torah a few weeks ago on Simchat Torah. So from that time on, all of the people of Israel are reading the same parasha every week together. And it has become something of a connection also between people. When you go abroad, when you go traveling and you meet a Jew, you can always talk about the parasha. And I think it's something amazing that is purely part of Shabbat. The reading has 7 people who come up to the Torah, 7 men, and after those 7 men that come up to the Torah, every time they bless the Torah, and nowadays the reader reads the Torah. In ancient times, every person who went up to bless the Torah also read his part, because people knew by heart all the Torah. And even nowadays, if you go to communities, different communities, I know about Yemenites that are still learning the Torah by heart, and they can you can see Yemenites who sometimes don't keep mitzvot, but they know by heart all of the Torah, which I think is beautiful. And encourage everybody to learn the Torah and learn it by heart as much as possible. And I just want to clarify one thing that usually is not clear. After the Torah reading, we're having a haftarah, a reading from the prophets. And many people there don't know exactly what's happening. Like, we're reading the Torah and all of a sudden we're reading something else. So I just want to clarify. It's a reading from the prophets. It comes from a time when Jews were forbidden to read from the Torah. And so the rabbis of that time chose excerpts from the prophets that talk about similar subjects like the parasha. And when the time moved on and the Jews were not forbidden anymore to read the Torah, they went back to reading the Torah. They still kept this idea that there is, for every parasha, a matching haftarah, a matching part from the prophets who is dealing with more or less the same subject. And I encourage you to think, what is the connection every Shabbat? It's very interesting, and sometimes there are a few answers to that. What is the reason for the haftarah? And since we don't want people to think that the haftarah is as important as reading the Torah, the person who reads the haftarah is getting an aliyah that is, or a blessing of the Torah that is not part of the 7 blessings. And that's why we have an 8th blessing, which is called the maftir. So if you're wondering why we're talking all the time about 7 aliyot, but actually there are 8 people who are coming to bless the Torah, you should know that the last person is coming up to the Torah, not for the sake of blessing the Torah, but for the sake of the haftarah. Since we don't want to make some kind of thought that the haftarah, that the reading of the prophets is on the same level as reading the Torah, this person who reads the haftarah will come up a bit before and bless the Torah again. And that's why the maftir, if any of you get confused about that, the maftir is actually reading a small portion of the last 7th aliyah. So after we read the whole parasha, we go back a few psukim before, you will see a small word saying maftir. That is the part that we read only to serve the haftarah.
There was a hand raised before, Silke, and is it still relevant?
Yeah, it was just about reading the Torah on Shabbos. Of course, you go to shul and you read the Torah there, and the rabbi does some analysis. My question is, because I'm starting to read Torah and it's new for me, and I sometimes get a little bit freaked out by the stories. So I've helped myself by reading Torah with analysis with it, and sometimes just reading the analysis first. Is that okay? Do I have to read hardcore just Torah, or is it okay that I read a little bit of an expert of what the analysis of it?
It's not only permitted, it's a mitzvah. It's called Shnai Mikra V'Echad Targum, and I have it here to talk about it, but unfortunately, since we have 2 minutes, we won't be able to talk about it. But it is very, very good to do it, to read part of the parasha and then a commentary or things that help you understand it. It's even preferable. And Shnai Mikra V'Echad Targum means that the original order is to read the whole parasha twice and read over every part of the parasha also some kind of commentary. And many people use this opportunity to read a commentary, every year, a different commentary, and to do it over the week. So every day you're doing 1 aliyah. Since you have 7 aliyot in 7 days, on Sunday you read the parasha of Sunday and the commentary. On Monday you read the 2nd aliyah. On Tuesday you read the 3rd aliyah, and so on and so forth. So good for you. It's amazing what you're describing, and it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
I have a book called Studies in Spirituality that takes the weekly Torah and analyzes it, and how do you turn it into mitzvah? Is that okay too?
Yes, absolutely. I wouldn't give up on the original source. You should know the sources of the parasha. You should know what's written in the Torah itself. But if as you said, it's sometimes doesn't give you the full picture that you would like. So of course you should read also any kind of analysis that is good. I can suggest also more commentaries, but yeah, it sounds like a good book. I don't know it personally, so yeah, we have a minute and we have much more to speak about. So I think that I think that we will say goodbye now to anybody who wants to leave because the time is over. I will speak about one more thing that is connected to the Shabbat day, and we will speak together. Maybe we will have sometimes another shiur about the end of Shabbat, which we didn't get to speak about yet. So anybody who wants to leave is welcome to leave now. I will just say something about the Kiddush of the day. And regarding the end of Shabbat, both the afternoon and the Havdalah, we will hopefully either do a separate shiur some other time, or we will send a source sheet so you can go over it by yourself. So regarding the Kiddush, so as you can see in the source in the screen, the Kiddush is called Kiddusha Rabbah, a big Kiddush. And the idea of the Kiddush of the day is that we did already the testimony on Shabbat Eve. And therefore, the Kiddush of the night is very, very important. The Kiddush of the day is not as important. It's important to do it as a sign of honoring the Shabbat, but the remembrance was already done. And therefore, there are many things that are not as crucial. For instance, on Shabbat day, there are customs in many communities not to do Kiddush on wine, but on other kind of alcohol. It could be whiskey, it could be some kind of liquor. It should be alcoholic, and it doesn't have to be the big amount of Kiddush. It could be much smaller, since it's a Kiddush, since it's not a testimony, but a sense of honoring the Shabbat. Again, you have the drink. The person who drinks has to drink. All the laws that apply to the Shabbat evening regarding the Kiddush apply also here. Two things that I want to say here, and that's how we will finish. First of all, it is forbidden to fast on Shabbat. And fasting is considered when a person eats after the half of the day is gone. If the half of the day is gone and you didn't eat yet, it's a problem. It's considered that you fasted on Shabbat, and that shouldn't be. It shouldn't be, because Shabbat is a day of pleasure. And so it's important to put something into your mouth, to do Kiddush before the half of the day is gone. There are people who rule that because of the idea of not eating, that you're not allowed to fast, they eat something small before the prayer. Some hold that it is forbidden to eat before prayer, and some hold that it is preferable to eat before prayer, especially on Shabbat, since that way we don't get into the problem of fasting on Shabbat. I do suggest that anybody who in his synagogue or her synagogue, you finish after the half of the day is gone on Shabbat, to eat something before, either a small cracker or even a cup of coffee is enough, just so you won't fast. But after you finish the prayer, and that's true also for Shabbat evening, you shouldn't eat anything before Kiddush. And that is pretty important. If of course you're in huge anxiety and you must eat, you're allowed to eat. And of course, a woman who's pregnant, that doesn't apply to her. She should eat whenever she feels she has to eat. But the general rule is that we're not eating between the prayer and Kiddush. We're not putting anything in our mouth, preferably even not water. And one last thing is, I said that the Kiddush of the evening is more important than the Kiddush of the day, but the meal of the day is more important than the meal of the evening. And therefore, if you have two things that you cooked, and one you like more than the other, you should save it for the meal of the day. And honoring the Shabbat meal should be more focused on the day than on the evening. So this is regarding the Kiddush. If I don't know what we will decide, but anyway, they're in the book of Halakha. You could see many details regarding the afternoon of Shabbat and the getting out of Shabbat, including Havdalah. Hopefully, I hope that these sessions were useful, were practical, and you know more about what to do every part of Shabbat. If you have questions, you should ask your rabbi, and of course, I'd be happy to answer also questions now.
Yeah, there are a few questions in the chat of Natan.
Okay. So let's Arad Yanai, you can bless also on water. You're asking this regarding the Kiddush? Is Arad here or he left? Okay, if the question was regarding Kiddush, so no, you're not allowed to do Kiddush on water. In the evening, you must do Kiddush on wine. And as I said, in the morning, you can do Kiddush also on other alcohol. And Michael's question before, you can also do on grape juice. Dan Avramson, can whiskey be diluted with water? It could be diluted a little bit, but you should still feel the alcohol. Do you have to set your
yeah.
Yes.
I don't know if anyone, maybe some people here have the capacity to drink a full Kiddush cup of whiskey, but that might be, as you mentioned before, you should have a full cup, and there's discussion about that, whether a smaller glass of whiskey equals a full glass of grape juice. We won't get into it, but it's yeah, as you said, Rav Natan, it's not something that you would be thinking of, or maybe some people here might be thinking of having a full Kiddush cup of whiskey, and in that case, you definitely can dilute it a bit with water.
Yes, and please invite me to your Shabbat table. I want to see this. Do you have to set your table if you're having Shabbat meals elsewhere? That's a very good question. Thank you. It's a mitzvah to put a white tablecloth on your table, regardless of if you're eating there or not. There's no need to put on plates or anything that you're not using, but your table should be set and beautiful for Shabbat. How to do with no wine, grape juice for Havdalah. So as I said, I hope that we will have an opportunity to talk about Havdalah in this course. But I'll just say that in Havdalah, it's preferable to do on wine or grape juice. If you don't have, you can use any kind of special drink that is used to be drunk in your area. It could be beer. It could be, again, some kind of liquor. My family does Havdalah on coffee, but that's because none of us drink coffee. So I don't think it's relevant for Scandinavian countries where coffee is like water. Yes, Michael, you had a question, and then Gisa Sarah.
Yes, I just want to check if I understand it correct. The Kiddush on the Shabbat day, with a small difference, is it mandatory to do it before the meal?
Yes, it's
It's
mandatory.
mandatory.
It's mandatory. Yes, thank you for this question. Maybe I wasn't clear. It is mandatory, but the rules are not as strict since it's not for the remembering of the Shabbat, it's for honoring the Shabbat. Is that clearer?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Gisa Sarah.
Yes, when we get invitations to Shabbos dinners, should we bring something to the house? And if we should, what kind of things we should bring? Because I mainly don't bring anything. I really come with empty hands because I'm not sure if I should bring something. It's very confusing.
It's a very good question. You will dive into it in the next few weeks.
Okay, no
there,
problem then.
but I'll just say briefly, it's a problem to if you're in a country that doesn't have an eruv, that doesn't have so you're not allowed to carry anything on Shabbat.
Anything, yeah.
And there's also a problem of bringing presents if they were not planned before. So it is a problem, and I'm aware of the problematic feeling of being impolite if you're invited somewhere. You will speak about it in the next few weeks, and
Okay.
I think you will have a clearer
Yeah,
answer.
no problem. Thank you very much.
Are you allowed to remove the tablecloth on Shabbat table if it gets dirty? Of course, because then it's not honorable for Shabbat. But I would suggest that you prepare a few Shabbat cloths and keep a white tablecloth or any kind of. It's preferable white, but if you feel like you honor the Shabbat with purple, it could be approved. But just prepare a new tablecloth. So every time in the end of every meal, there will be a beautiful Shabbat cloth on the table for the next meal or for the remainings of Shabbat. Any other questions? No. So have a Shavua Tov, a Chodesh Tov. Friday is Rosh Chodesh, Kislev. So have a Chodesh Tov and all the best, and hopefully we'll meet each other in person in the near future.
Thank you, Rav
Thank
Natan.
you.
And next week we will the shiur will continue. We'll begin learning about muktzeh and the prohibitions of Shabbat. After all of the positive energy from Rav Natan and everything we do to honor and respect the Shabbat. So we will begin with the subject of muktzeh with Rav Yair. Remember that this is a new link from now on, so don't get confused. This is a link to use, and we'll also upload this shiur to the new channel that we've opened, and you will be able to access this shiur and the following shiurim there as well. This Shabbat will have a Shabbat Bet Midrash in Oslo, and next Sunday in Finland. If you haven't gotten the information about that, you can let me know. Shavua Tov to everyone. See you hopefully on Wednesday at the Beit Midrash and next week as well. Shavua Tov to everyone, and thank you, Rav Natan, for fantastic shiurim.
Shavua Tov. Thank you.
Shavua Tov. Shavua Tov. Thank you very much.
רב נתן, אתה ההוסט, אתה צריך להפסיק את ההקלטה.
הפסקת הקלטה בנפרד